Mark Winters stared at the contract in his trembling hands, tears blurring the words he'd fought so hard to secure. "Daddy, did we win?" His 7-year-old daughter Lily's voice cut through his emotion. He looked up at his boss, Victoria, whose expression had transformed from cold calculation to something he'd never seen before. The bet that had started as a cruel power play had become something neither of them expected, a chance at healing they both desperately needed. If you've ever felt like life has backed you into a corner, this story might just give you hope. Hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that show how a single moment of courage can change everything. 3 months earlier, Mark had been barely hanging on. After losing his wife to cancer 2 years ago, he'd been struggling to balance raising Lily alone while working as a senior account manager at Pinnacle Marketing. His performance had been slipping, and his new boss, Victoria Chen, had made it clear his job was on the line. Victoria was notorious throughout the company, brilliant but ruthless, having clawed her way to the top through sheer determination. Rumors about her cold demeanor and impossible standards followed her everywhere. Some said she'd never smiled, others whispered she'd sacrificed everything personal for her career. Mark had tried to avoid her radar, but his recent string of missed deadlines and emergency departures to pick up a sick Lily from school had made that impossible. "Winters, my office. Now." Victoria's voice cut through the open office space one Tuesday morning. Mark's colleagues shot him sympathetic glances as he followed her into the glass-walled corner office overlooking downtown. Victoria didn't invite him to sit. She stood behind her immaculate desk, a sleek modern affair as sharp and intimidating as she was. At 38, she was only a few years older than Mark, but the difference in their lives couldn't have been more stark. Where he was rumpled and perpetually exhausted, she was polished perfection in a tailored charcoal suit. "Your numbers are down 22% from last quarter," she said without preamble. "The Westridge account is wavering, and you've missed 3 client meetings this month. Give me one reason I shouldn't let you go." Mark felt the floor shift beneath him. He couldn't lose this job, not with the medical bills still piling up, not with Lily depending on him. "I know I've been struggling," he admitted. "But I'm a single parent trying to. I don't need your life story, Winters. I need results." Victoria cut him off, her dark eyes unreadable. "Everyone has problems. The difference is whether you let them define you or overcome them." Something in her dismissive tone sparked a rare flash of anger in Mark. "With all due respect, Ms. Chen, you have no idea what it's like to be responsible for another human being when you're barely holding yourself together." A dangerous silence fell. No one spoke to Victoria Chen that way. Mark was mentally updating his resume when she surprised him. "Let's make a bet, Winters." Her voice was cool, calculating. "Land the Meridian account, the one everyone says is impossible, within 3 months. Do that, and not only do you keep your job, but I'll give you the promotion Reynolds left vacant. Fail, and you clean out your desk without severance." Mark stared at her. The Meridian account was the white whale of their industry, a massive tech conglomerate that changed marketing firms like most people changed socks. No one had been able to keep them longer than 6 months. "You're setting me up to fail," he said quietly. A ghost of a smile touched Victoria's lips. "Am I? Or am I giving you the opportunity to prove me wrong? Your choice." Mark thought of Lily, of their small apartment, of the promise he'd made to his late wife that their daughter would always be taken care of. "I have one condition," he said, surprising himself with his boldness. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "You're hardly in a position to negotiate." "Maybe not. But if I'm going to pour everything into this impossible task, I need to know my daughter is taken care of." He took a deep breath. "I need flexibility for emergencies, and I need you to understand that sometimes being a parent has to come first." Victoria's expression hardened. "Business comes first at Pinnacle. Always." "Then I'll clear out my desk now," Mark said, turning toward the door. "Because I won't break a promise to my wife just to save my job." Wait. Victoria's command stopped him. Something flickered across her face, respect, perhaps, or curiosity. Fine. Your condition is accepted, within reason. But I expect you to make up every minute you take. Mark nodded, heart pounding. Deal. The next morning, Mark arrived early to find a thick file on his desk, Victoria's research on Meridian. A note in her precise handwriting read simply, "Don't waste this chance." For the next 2 weeks, Mark threw himself into the Meridian project. He stayed late after putting Lily to bed, researching their past marketing campaigns, identifying patterns in what had worked and what hadn't. He discovered that Meridian's CEO, James Harrington, valued innovation but also authenticity, something most agencies missed in their flashy pitches. Then came the first test of Victoria's promise. Lily's school called. She had a high fever and needed to be picked up immediately. Mark hesitated only a moment before grabbing his coat and heading for Victoria's office. She looked up from her computer, irritation clear on her face. "I'm in the middle of something, Winters. Lily's sick. I need to get her." He braced for the explosion. Victoria studied him for a long moment. "Go. But I expect an update on Meridian by tomorrow morning." Mark spent that night alternating between tending to Lily's fever and working on his Meridian presentation. By morning, Lily's fever had broken, and he had a rough outline of a campaign that focused on Meridian's overlooked commitment to sustainability, something their previous marketing had barely touched. When he emailed it to Victoria at 5 a.m., he didn't expect a response until business hours. Her reply came 3 minutes later, "Interesting angle. Develop it." Over the next few weeks, a strange rhythm developed. Mark would work furiously on the Meridian pitch, occasionally needing to step away for Lily, and Victoria would push him harder but never again questioned his parental responsibilities. Sometimes he'd find her watching him with an unreadable expression, as though trying to solve a puzzle. One evening, working late after most of the office had cleared out, Mark looked up to find Victoria standing at his desk. "Where's your daughter tonight?" she asked. "With my neighbor, Mrs. Patel. She watches Lily when I need to work late." Mark rubbed his tired eyes. "I try not to abuse her kindness, but this week has been challenging," Victoria finished for him. She hesitated, then sat in the chair beside his desk, something he'd never seen her do with any employee. "Show me what you have so far." For the next hour, they worked side by side on the Meridian pitch. Victoria was brutally efficient, cutting through his more sentimental ideas, but also surprisingly insightful about which emotional appeals might work with Harrington. "You know him?" Mark asked, surprised at her specific knowledge of the CEO's preferences. Victoria's expression closed slightly. "We've crossed paths. He's not easily impressed." As they wrapped up, Mark gathered his courage. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria glanced at her watch. Quickly. "Why this bet? Why not just fire me?" She was silent for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "Because potential shouldn't be wasted," she finally said, standing abruptly. "Even when it's complicated by other factors." The next morning, Mark arrived to find a small package on his desk. Inside was a children's book about a young girl whose mother was a busy executive. The note simply read, "For Lily." No strings. There was no signature, but he knew who it was from. That afternoon, his phone rang with Lily's school number. His heart sank, not another emergency. But the school administrator simply wanted to confirm that Ms. Chen was authorized to pick up Lily if needed. Confused, Mark called Victoria's office. "I added myself to your emergency contacts," she said matter-of-factly. "In case you're in a client meeting you can't leave. It's practical, not personal." Mark was speechless. Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just land Meridian." She hung up. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Mark refined the pitch, incorporating Victoria's suggestions while maintaining his original vision. They secured a meeting with Harrington himself, already a victory that had the office buzzing. 2 days before the presentation, disaster struck. Lily's appendix ruptured, requiring emergency surgery. Mark called Victoria from the hospital, his voice breaking as he explained. "The Meridian meeting is in 2 days," she said, her voice tight. "I know. I'll figure something out, but right now." "Text me the hospital and room number," Victoria interrupted. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. True to her word, Victoria arrived at the pediatric ward carrying her laptop and a stuffed bear. She looked utterly out of place in her designer suit among the colorful walls and worried parents, but her expression was determined. "Go be with your daughter," she said, handing him the bear. "I'll work from the waiting room. We'll prepare remotely." For the next 24 hours, Victoria remained at the hospital, working from an uncomfortable plastic chair while Mark stayed at Lily's bedside. When Lily was finally stable enough for Mark to step away, he found Victoria asleep in the waiting room, her normally perfect appearance rumpled, dark circles under her eyes. "You stayed all night," he said softly when she woke. Victoria straightened, immediately reaching for her phone to check messages. "The Meridian pitch is tomorrow. We couldn't afford to lose momentum." But something in her expression told a different story. When she asked to see Lily, Mark led her to the recovery room where his daughter was finally resting comfortably. "She looks like you," Victoria said quietly, studying the sleeping child. "Everyone says she looks like her mother," Mark replied. Victoria's gaze lingered on Lily. "I had my appendix out when I was about her age," she said unexpectedly. "I was alone most of the time. My parents were busy." Before Mark could respond, she turned briskly away. "The meeting is at 2 p.m. tomorrow. If Lily is stable, you should be there. If not, I'll handle it." But the bet was about whether you could develop the winning strategy, not whether you could physically be in the room. Victoria gathered her things. "Rest. I'll call you in the morning." The next day, with Lily recovering well under Mrs. Patel's watchful eye at the hospital, Mark joined Victoria for the Meridian presentation. As they waited in the company's sleek reception area, he noticed her unusual tension. "You know Harrington better than you let on, don't you?" he asked quietly. Victoria's jaw tightened. "We were engaged. Briefly. 10 years ago." Mark stared at her. "And you're just mentioning this now?" It wasn't relevant to the pitch. But her knuckles were white around her portfolio. "Victoria. He left me a week before the wedding," she said, her voice clinical. "Said he couldn't marry someone who would always put work first. Who would be a terrible mother because of her ambition." Her eyes met Mark's. "So yes, I know James Harrington very well." Before Mark could process this revelation, they were called into the boardroom. James Harrington was exactly as Mark had imagined, confident, shrewd, and immediately focused on Victoria. "Vicky," he said, his surprise evident. "I didn't realize you'd be here." "It's Victoria," she corrected coolly. "And I'm here to support my colleague, Mark Winters, who has developed an exceptional campaign for Meridian." The tension in the room was palpable as Mark began his presentation. He outlined his strategy focusing on Meridian's environmental initiatives, showing how they could position the company as a leader in sustainable tech without sacrificing their innovation message. Halfway through, Harrington interrupted. "This is good, but I'm not seeing anything revolutionary here." Mark faltered, but Victoria stepped forward. "Mark, show him the community engagement component." Mark hadn't planned to reveal that part yet, but he trusted Victoria's instinct. He pulled up the slides showing his idea for Meridian to partner with schools in underserved communities, providing technology education and resources. The Meridian Futures program, he explained, gaining confidence. "It's not just about selling products, it's about investing in the next generation of innovators. And it's personal for me." He showed a photo of Lily at her science fair. My daughter reminded me that the most powerful marketing isn't about what you say, but what you do. The room fell silent. Harrington studied the presentation, then looked between Mark and Victoria. This is unexpected. From both of you. Victoria stepped forward. Mark has shown me that effectiveness doesn't always look like we expect it to. Sometimes it comes from understanding what truly matters to people. Harrington's expression softened slightly. You've changed, Vicky. No, she said firmly. I've grown. There's a difference. After the meeting, as they waited for Harrington's decision, Mark and Victoria sat in her office in companionable silence. Thank you, Mark said finally. For everything these past months. Not just with Meridian, but with Lily. Victoria looked uncomfortable with his gratitude. It was a business decision. Was it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you went far beyond business. She was saved from responding by her phone. Harrington's decision had come through. Victoria read the email, her expression unreadable, then handed her phone to Mark. Meridian was accepting their proposal, with one condition. They wanted both Mark and Victoria to oversee the account personally. As partners. We did it, Mark breathed, relief washing over him. The bet was never really about Meridian, Victoria finished quietly. It was about proving something to myself. What? She hesitated, then spoke with rare vulnerability. That I could be successful without sacrificing everything human about me. That what James said wasn't true. Mark studied her. Is that why you helped with Lily? To prove you could? At first, perhaps. Victoria looked away. But then I met her. Saw how you were with her. Realized what I'd been missing by building walls around myself. 1 month later, Mark sat in Victoria's office signing the contract for his promotion to partner on the Meridian account. The past weeks had seen remarkable changes, not just in his professional standing, but in Victoria herself. She had become a regular visitor at their home, bringing books for Lily and occasionally staying for dinner. The office whispered about the transformation in their once-feared boss, who now sometimes left early for school events and had been seen actually laughing in the break room. As Mark signed the final page, tears unexpectedly blurred his vision. The security this promotion provided for Lily's future, the vindication of his abilities, the unexpected friendship with Victoria, it all hit him at once. Daddy, did we win? Lily's voice came from the doorway where she waited with Mrs. Patel, who had brought her to see her father's big moment. Mark looked up at Victoria, whose own eyes held unexpected moisture. Yes, sweetheart, he said. I think we all did. Victoria knelt to Lily's level, something the old Victoria would never have done in a professional setting. Your dad is very special, Lily. He taught me something important. What? Lily asked, wide-eyed. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let people see who you really are. Victoria glanced up at Mark. Even when you're scared. Later that evening, as they celebrated with ice cream in the park, Victoria watched Lily running ahead on the path. I never thought I could have this, she admitted quietly. Have what? Mark asked. Balance. Connection. She hesitated. Family, even if it's not traditional. Mark smiled. The bet changed everything, didn't it? No, Victoria corrected him. Your condition did. Your courage to put what matters most first, even when it could have cost you everything. As the sun set over the park, Mark realized that what had begun as a desperate gamble had transformed into something neither he nor Victoria could have predicted, a second chance for both of them to redefine success on their own terms. And as Lily ran back to them, grabbing both their hands and pulling them forward, Mark knew that sometimes the greatest victories come not from winning bets, but from having the courage to change the rules entirely.